HLS Modern Workplace Talk, Microsoft 365 Live Events, and Skype TX. Hi, I'm your host, Michael Giannotti, and I'm an HLS Healthcare and Life Sciences Technology Specialist. You can always find me and my colleagues at our blog site at aka.ms/HLSblog. That's aka.ms/HLSblog. So today's session is brought to us by a customer question I actually received yesterday on our blog site. And the question was as following: Mike, like a bad penny, I keep showing up. Whoa, let's just stop right there. First of all, you're not a bad penny. The questions you're having is ones that I'm sure others will have as well. So yes, I keep showing up with more questions, laugh out loud. I'm not an AV guy, but I learned today that the TriCaster TC1 uses a special version of Skype called Skype TX to enable Skype callers to be integrated into a broadcast. I have two questions. Now, before the questions, let me just clarify for those tuning in. The TriCaster TC1 is a product by Newtek, and the TC1 is basically a studio in the box, so it allows you to pull in multiple camera feeds and other things, do things like set up a virtual set with a green screen so you can make it look very professional. And it allows you to do a whole range of things and then output an Rtmp stream, which you can send up to, you guessed it, to Microsoft 365 Live Events. Skype TX is something we'll talk about in a moment, but suffice it to say it helps in bringing in external users as native presenters. So the first question was, now that Skype is going away, what is the future of Skype TX? Can Teams replace Skype TX today? So firstly, let's address that right up front. We're talking with Skype TX, it's based on Skype Consumer, not Skype for Business. So it is not going away. It is there. It's an industry standard that's used throughout the media industry. Frequently, you'll see this in use with television shows where they have the big talking head, where they don't have the guest physically there, but they bring them in remote and they'll pull them in that way. You also see it very frequently used with local news stations these days, where they can send out teams and they don't require the van with all the expensive equipment. They could have something like a little stabilizer gimbal for a phone and take an iPhone or Android phone, have Skype on it, just a Skype consumer account, and then through Skype TX bring them in as a native camera feed just via the data on their phone. So it's a super versatile way to pull in external people. It's not going away anytime soon. So can Teams replace Skype TX today? It's not designed to. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Number two, is it possible to somehow integrate Skype TX into Office 365 Azure so the Skype TX callers can use accounts in our tenant? We tried creating an account in Skype TX today, but you cannot create an account here with a work or school email address. Use personal email such as Gmail or Yahoo Message. That's exactly what we don't want. I see Skype, but not Skype TX is in the Azure App Gallery. Not sure if this can somehow help. Thanks again for all your help. So real quickly, and we'll address this in a little more in depth. Again, if you think about the primary use case of Skype TX for media, for companies, like TV shows or news stations, etc., to bring in these external parties, and it being based on Skype Consumer, then you understand why you're not able to use a school or work account, because that would be Skype for Business, right? This is Skype Consumer. So I'll talk about more of the versatility that gives you and things you can do with that, but suffice it to say, no, you cannot, and that's by design. So let's go ahead and move on. So the first thing is that I want to quickly address is this. When we're talking about Microsoft 365 live events, we're talking about a video service that allows us to deliver live content, and for an encoder, in this case is what we're talking about, the encoder itself can be hardware or software as long as it outputs Rtmp. Now, Rtmp is an industry standard. It's been out there for quite a long time. If you go out to any of the major services and produce a stream using hardware or software, and they have published to, whatever service, that's what you're using is Rtmp, and Microsoft 365 live events is no different, and that's in all three flavors. If you do it via stream, if you do it via Yammer, or via Teams. So in the case of Teams, the Teams client actually serves as an Rtmp client, outputting an Rtmp stream to the Azure Media Services under the hood. So that's the big piece that we're talking about right there. And in order to intersect with that, in this case, he's calling out a Newtek TriCaster. And I love TriCasters. They've been around for a while. The latest iterations output 4K. You can have all kinds. You can see here from this picture, right, that it's pretty sophisticated. You have, number one, essentially that's a Windows PC, and I think it's a 2U height model, so it's made to just stick into a rack. Then you can have multiple screens like they have here, for various mixing views, etc. Here you're seeing it's a sporting event they're bringing in. You can get a mixing board for it, so you can automate. I mean, it is high end. It is super cool, and you can do things like virtual sets, etc., and pull all kinds of different cameras in, cameras over IP, physical cameras hooked up, high def cameras. I used to have Blackmagic cameras in the unit I got to work with way back when. It's just great equipment, and at a low cost, it allows you to have this whole studio in a box experience. And the beauty of it is, out of the box, it allows you to set up and publish to Rtmp, right? It's that real-time media protocol that allows you to publish out an audio video stream to the Azure Media Services and then have that rebroadcasted. But shipping now with these built in is Skype TX, right? So Skype TX is a service, as I mentioned, that leverages Skype Consumer on the remote person side. And what it allows you to do is anybody who has Skype Consumer, it could be on an iPhone, an iPad, an Android phone, Android tablet, it could be on a Mac, on a PC. We don't really care. You can have that, then that external feed, you can pull that in. Here we see, it looks like there's 8 of them. You can have multiple feeds coming in. I thought it was 4 that they allowed. I haven't been on this in a while, but you can see we've got these various, and actually I believe these are the different ones here. So we can pull in these different folks from different areas, right? So we have these remote people, and then we can mix and match them in our studio, like up here, and then output it. So basically the workflow looks like this. You have in a studio, physical studio, you may have a table set up with a person sitting there, right? And then you have one or more cameras looking at them, different angles. These cameras feeding into a Newtek TriCaster, right? A TriCaster here. But then you can have these remote folks, and it can be on phones, they can be on PCs with keyboards, right? Make some kind of hookup there. And you can have these other individuals, and they are coming in just via their data on Skype into this same Skype, this TriCaster here, like so. And then we can take and mix and match those people, and then all of it's pushed out via Rtmp. to our live events, where it's then rebroadcast to our attendees, right? So you can do this very sophisticated setup, right? Like I was saying, where we go ahead, we produce everything in the TriCaster. We pull in remote folks, multiple folks that can be on phones, PCs, etc. And it basically turns that device via Skype into a camera, right? It becomes a camera for them, so that it's just like they're sitting in the studio, but they could be out on the streets, they could be at an event, whatever the case might be. And then we can mix it all and then push it out to our live events. So the idea is, though, with this is something that's table stakes, happens every day. Oftentimes when you see somebody, it's the reporter on the street now for a local TV station, they don't have that whole big setup anymore. They went out in a little, maybe they went out in a, I was about to say a Yugo, but those cars aren't, a little Prius or something, right? And somebody's holding a phone with a nice quality mic pumping into it. Or they have a mic and it has wireless to a reception piece that's plugged into their phone, but they have a little rig like that, and they're using Skype on that device to then do the reporter on the street, which is why sometimes you see some pixelation, right? Because it's their data connection, and how fast that is will affect the video quality. But the idea is this is a consumer play, because we don't want these remote folks dependent upon having an ID in our network. Now, I used to use this when I did this at Microsoft Technology Center. I would frequently have speakers from our corporate who would go ahead and present and talk, and I'd pull them in and interview them remotely, and we'd broadcast it via what was then Skype Media Broadcast, which is now the 365 live events. It's evolved into that. But we would use that Skype TX to pull those folks in and get a great feed. So the short answer is yes, you can do this, but it is based on Skype Consumer. It does get upscaled to an HD feed to show up as a camera and then get pulled into this whole setup, as I mentioned. So I hope that explains it. I know I'm kind of rambling a bit, but really when we talk about this kind of a device, this is meant to address much more than just 365 live events. You can also do recordings, standalone. You can push out to other services besides live event. There's a whole range of them that are pre-configured. But this is a great device to do that. If you do want to pull in people via this, that's a different story. Now, having said that, this device here has inputs, right? And output. Whoop, I just erased. Input and outputs. And typically they have input via SDI and output via SDI. And so what you're able to do there, though, if you wanted to pull in people via Teams into one of their sessions, like maybe you want that Brady Bunch look, right, with the new tiles that are coming out that we recently announced. So you have multiple tiles. Well, what you could do is have, for example, a machine here. Maybe I have, let's say, I'm just going to say this is a laptop. There's my screen and blah, blah, my Brady Bunch look. And I could have output via HDMI to something called a Magwell card, or there's other devices, but go, HDMI out to SDI, and then push that in here, and that would show up like a camera feed, right? So you plug that SDI input in, and that just shows up as one other camera. So instead of these, I'm using it becomes one of these cameras up here that allows me to now pull that in and use that. So I could have that Brady Bunch look, and I could, again, mix that with other looks, etc. But maybe I have a person sitting in the room here, and then I have it with the virtual set, looks like them with a big TV over their shoulder or a big screen, and in that big screen I put this particular Teams meeting as the input, and I bring it in again over SDI into here. So yes, you can do that. The other thing that you can do though with this, maybe you want to use Teams live events to publish it instead of using one of the others. Now there is the newer option to be able to use an external encoder for Teams, so you could publish via Rtmp to that, or they do have outputs, as I mentioned, and you could do output SDI. Conversely, go SDI to something like a Magwell. I'll just spell that here, Magwell. They have SDI to USB 3 as an example, USB 3.0, and then that'll show up like a giant webcam, a high-def webcam to your PC in Teams. So now I could take all that pre-mixed goodness that's happening in the TriCaster and then have that show up in Teams and just do a single window, for example, and have that just be one big, whatever it is I'm serving out of the TriCaster. So there's a whole range of options. I hope this makes sense to you. I'm going to put some links to some of the different pieces so that you can get an understanding as to what they are, how they're targeting, and do some further, lookups if you'd like. But again, Teams Live Events loves TriCaster. It's one of a whole range of hardware that can output to it. Personally, I love them for what they do. I wish I had access to one still. I don't. I'm at home with just a PC and no things like Magwells or others. But hey, even then I can output, pretty good content. But certainly this is a great device, and they have a whole range of them. They have a mini. They now have a mini 4K model. So they have a whole range of different ones depending on your needs. The one that has Skype TX, think of it if you want to bring in talking heads from people who aren't part of your company, or if you do want them, then have that client. But it's a great way to pull in folks if you're doing events and others and want to have them live like a reporter on the ground. Maybe they have a tablet or phone device, and that can be the camera. That will serve as a native camera. So that's that. Whoops. And I'm trying to advance here. So that's it. I want to thank you for tuning in. You can learn more about Microsoft's Modern Workplace at our Healthcare and Life Sciences blog at aka.ms/HLS blog. That's aka.ms/HLS blog. I hope you enjoyed this content. This video was created using Microsoft PowerPoint recording. If you don't see that in your PowerPoint in the ribbon, then you go to File, down to Options, then pick Customize Ribbon, and then on the right-hand column, scroll down and you'll see Recording. Check it, say OK, and it'll appear. And you can make videos like this as well. With that, this is Mike Giannotti bidding you have a great day. Take care, and as always, ciao.